So on today's episode, I'm happy to welcome Jan Young. Jan is the founder and CEO of Step Up Exchange and Jan Young CX. She's also a 3-time top 25 CS influencer. Jan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mikey. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to be reconnecting with you. And so, as you know, on each episode, we get into the nitty gritty blind spots that you've come up against as a CX leader. Before we get into that, could you maybe do a quick intro on yourself, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then maybe set the stage for the story that we're going to get into?
Yeah, sure. I've been in tech for over 20 years. I started in the .com era, for real. And I've done a little bit of everything. I've done product, project, account management, sales, marketing, professional services, and customer success, my true love. And I really kind of take all of those practices and experiences and pull them all into a sort of go-to-market approach to customer revenue. And so I think about go-to-market alignment a lot, and I think a little more broadly. Some folks in customer success think about when the customer gets sort of thrown over the fence to them. I think about the customer through the whole journey and really encourage other CS leaders to do the same.
Very cool, and I am excited to hear the specifics of the pain that you experienced. Not to pour salt in the wound right now, but can you maybe set a little bit of the context of what was going on when you discovered that you had a challenge you needed to solve, and we'll dive into some more questions after that.
Yeah, I gotta say this: the one that really sticks in my head is the one that really led me to creating the accelerator program, frankly, CS Business Leadership Accelerator in Step Up Exchange. I was an interim VP of Customer Success, and technically I wasn't even VP. He thought that CS would be director level, but I knew it needed to be VP, and so I referred to the role as VP all along, and knew that I would have to get the founder CEO on board with it, which I did. This was a Series A company that had just gone Series B. This was back during the growth at any cost phase, so they were just all about hiring. They had a couple of CSMs, and they didn't have any systems or processes for those CSMs to follow. It was every CSM for themselves, just trying to, do what they could. There was nothing, even Salesforce wasn't set up correctly for them to use. They didn't have like a full list of their customer base. I had to kind of put that together with the revenue. They didn't understand what their costs were. They didn't really have a correct way of calculating churn, so that way they didn't have to own up to the fact that they actually had 25% churn, not 10% churn, when they were reporting to the board. And there was no real set process, even though they had the idea of customer segments. They didn't really have a true sales process coming through from marketing through sales and all of that. They didn't have real packages of what was the difference of what they sold to a strategic / enterprise customer versus mid-market versus SMB. You name it. Like there wasn't any sort of real go-to-market alignment. If someone came in that was even smaller than SMB, like just a shop that had like 1 or 2 people, they would sell to them too. They had this idea of selling to enterprise when they hadn't built out the product to work for the other customers yet. And they didn't do a full assessment of what it would take to actually work for enterprise, and yet they were trying to sell into enterprise as well. So they were really just, everything about this company was all over the map. And so I set about with all of the tools that I'd ever built in 20 years of everything that I'd done, and started to apply it to this particular startup. And
So it sounds like if we're kind of looking at the entire the premise of this show is a metric that was a blind spot, but you went into an organization where it seems like CS as a whole was a blind spot. They had
go to
CS and
market as a whole. No. Go to
the whole market.
market
Okay.
was a blind spot because well, let me tell you. So what happened
Yeah.
was, when I did start to show like that there were some customers that were more profitable than others. So like there was nothing that was aligned, right? And so we came up with a master list of accounts, what the actual revenue was, if they were actually paid or if they were behind on paying, like you name it. Like we went through, everything. Then also, what was the cost? What was the customer acquisition cost? What was the onboarding cost, the support cost? You name it. Like, what was the cost to serve across the board? And then from there, what was the profitability? So we got that together on a per account basis, so that then we could start slicing and dicing the data by segments. So I had my top 10, my bottom 10, in terms of revenue, in terms of profitability, you name it. So we did analysis, in every which way, to be able to then look at, should there be customers that we should fire? Are there segments that, will ever be profitable? And basically what I was able to do is show them that there was a certain group of customers that were referred, even internally by marketing and sales. They referred to them as non-ICP, and yet they sold to them anyway. The CEO then looked at it and said, well, wait a minute, these non-ICP, we're never going to break even on them. We're only spending money on them. And then he said, in that meeting right then, he said to marketing, marketing, do we weed out the non-ICP? And literally the marketing leader was like, what? I don't know. Basically no. Like there was no process for marketing or the SDRs or even the AEs to weed out any of even the most obvious non-ICP customers. And the thing about the non-ICP is they were very easy to sell to. And so oftentimes they would sell, like if they needed to close the end of the month or quarter to be more profitable, then they would basically sell to these non-ICP and everybody would cheer. Like literally they would sell to all these little, companies, and everybody would be like, yeah, look, that's awesome. You did another sell, when it was like they were losing money. Right.
Yeah.
So basically that was, so the whole go-to-market was just out of whack, is what I would say, is that there was no part of this go-to-market process that had been aligned. And I think from this experience, not only did I pull out every tool in the toolbox to then be able to assess things and be able to show what was going on, but I think that's also why then I feel so strongly that as CS leaders, we can, because we are responsible for the customer revenue, right? And customer revenue is what keeps the lights on. That we need to also understand profitability, and that we also then need to take this information back to marketing and sales and product and help them build their processes so that we're all in alignment, so that then everyone is going towards the same North Star of profitability and profitable customers, right?
Is it the metric that led you to go into the information gathering? Was there like, I see there's churn, or I'm having like what was the smoking gun that led you to do this deep dive?
Yeah. So about 2 weeks after I came on board, I was supposed to put together board slides, and I was like, okay, where's the data? Like, where do I get this data from? And it was just completely unclear. Like I couldn't go to Salesforce for it. And so that's what got me started. And as soon as I started to gather any little bit of information, it just led to more questions. And
Yeah.
and all of the definitions were contradictory. You know, there was no real alignment on the definitions. And I was just like, okay, you know, so I put something together so I could show up to that first board meeting, right?
Mhm.
But I wasn't satisfied with it, and I felt so reluctant to put my name on it, and you know that I really didn't even want to speak up much during that board meeting because I didn't want them to ask me questions because I'd have to say I don't know, you know. So
Right. Yeah, that's an important piece is being comfortable, having uncomfortable conversations. Yeah. So I mean, across the entire organization, you're basically seeing investment in this just money pit for the company, whether it be
right,
sales, marketing,
right.
product, and CS. Uh, Taking like a huge step back, I'm curious, why did they bring you in? Like, what was the where were they that they were like it seems like they were so lost. Like, what was the initial like remit of bringing you in as this direct? Because
Yeah.
it feels probably over delivered on expectations. But like, I'm curious how you were brought in to begin
Well, okay. So it depends on what you mean by over delivered, right? So
with.
like this was not what I was brought in to do to gather all of this data and everything, but it was the only way that I knew to sort of get my bearings. Yeah, so the director before was frustrated as heck. He was like,
Yeah.
"I'm done. I'm out, you know, goodbye." And so they needed somebody yesterday, and I was doing fractional work, so I came in to I was supposed to be there for a couple of months, and it took them like 6 months before they, you know, got somebody in. And during that time, then I attempted to not only get all the data together, but also to completely reorganize what they were doing, and also through providing all of this data, then the CEO realized how important the role was and changed it from being director level to VP level and made it part of it, you know, made it at the executive level and added me to the executive Slack and the executive meetings, things like that. So and so that then that's set up for the next person coming in that they would be at that executive level as well.
There's a lot of this story that is extensible to I think a lot of different folks that I speak with, both people that are in an organization that might be a less mature organization and they are maybe not an experienced uh, CS leader, but they don't feel like things are being done right.
Yeah,
They don't feel like they
yeah,
have the tooling in place. So
hmm
it checks the box for people in that situation. It checks the box for people who join a new organization, not on an interim basis, but as the
yeah,
new director, and they are shocked at what they see. They feel like they're walking into something that is a complete mess. And then the
yeah,
last group is people that are in the director position and feel like they are being undervalued. And how do you advocate for the importance of your role
yeah,
to turn it into something that is seen as a VP position? So
yeah,
I see all of those stories within one here, and so I want to make sure that each person that fits that kind of um, that persona gets value and feels like they have something that they can take away and use it to either better their organization, build out that necessary infrastructure, uh, rebuild infrastructure if you're taking on an existing
hmm
team, or communicate the value of their position. Do you want to maybe give your thoughts on if you're just starting, like you can't do everything
yeah,
at once, like what would be the
right.
one thing besides joining your masterclass, which I know is something that is a great program, but
Yeah.
within their own tool set, I'm curious if you have thoughts on how you can take this into your
Yeah.
own hands.
Well, I mean, the first thing is you want to start gathering the data. You want to be sure that you it can be in a Google sheet. I mean, what I was doing there was in a Google sheet. Don't feel like, oh, but I don't have Salesforce set up. Salesforce wasn't set up in this case either. It was the worst case of a Salesforce setup that I'd ever seen. Right? Okay, so like it was useless. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we just literally put it together in Google Sheets, got a list of all of the accounts and what was their current contract, what was the current revenue, that just basic information, and sort of started to build from there. And then, if there was a segment that they were called or something like that, you can put that in. Or if you don't have segments or tiers worked out, that's okay. Just, whatever. Try and at least have some contact information somewhere. You still want to have a ticketing system for support, because you want to do a couple of things. You want to train your customers to submit support tickets. You want to have a process for tracking those support tickets. You want to start having a way to start collecting documentation, whatever documentation you do have, so that you can draw upon the support scenarios from that, so that you can try to, in this day and age, you want to be able to use AI as soon as you can. So you want to, you also, support tickets are really important in terms of making certain that you know what's working and what's broken, and how to document that information to share back with product and engineering, especially if you're early stage as a customer, or as a product. But also just to know, like, if you've closed the loop on things, right? Because if you have a bunch of open items, that's, or if there's one customer in particular that has some, egregious support issues that are going on for months, that's enough to tell you, like, that's a red alert or something, right? Otherwise, for some initial basics, you want to identify how you are onboarding a customer, and in as much as possible, depending upon the status of your product, you want to be sure that as much as can be built into the product for the onboarding process as can be, you want that to be built in to make it easy and self-service as much as possible. So there's things like that, that especially in this day and age with AI, you want to be sure that you're calling upon the tools that you can to make it as user friendly for your customers as possible, right? So those are like the three areas that you want to do. But if you have an AI first product, chances are you're going to be working with them even before the initial sale to understand what their business requirements are and what their technical requirements are.
When you talk about the cost, where you were upside down on those customers, and you're seeing that you are those non-ICP customers that are just completely draining the resources, you mentioned some of the ways that you can track or implemented tracking of the revenue, but like, how did you even know that the cost was high? Like, I know you understand the revenue was low. Where was the cost coming from in terms of the tracking that you were able to report to the CEO?
Yeah. So what we were doing was we took a look at how long customers were staying in onboarding, and how many tickets were being implemented, and challenges there were, and how often was it going off to engineering, and did it take time, and that sort of thing. Because the onboarding process was another challenge, I'll say. So there was that. And so there were some customers that had really problematic and high cost onboardings compared to others. And then there were also, in the support process, there were some customers, and it's always healthy for customers to use the support, you know what I mean? Like, to have some tickets to show that they're using it, to, have some sort of interaction with the product. But there were some customers that wanted a lot of features built out specifically for them, and this was a startup that was doing a lot of customized builds for customers. Instead of it being a true SaaS product, they were building out a number of features and fields and reports and things that were specific to certain clients, and could only be used by them. And then So that was some additional cost. And then there were also some tickets for parts of the product that were broken that would go off to engineering and sort of languish, and had just a lot of cost.
And I think your point about just understanding it's like the financial literacy, the profitability, just the margins of the business, and being able to manage that as a leader of a post sales or go to market organization. I do believe that the difference between someone being perceived as the mercenary, the lower value, save the client and move on, and just that's the limit of your responsibility, versus someone who is helping design an organization that is going to increase the value for shareholders, or
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
eventual value for an exit. Like, that is something I do think that a lot of newer leaders in CS, especially those that started in the IC roles where the primary responsibility was just maintaining the customer health, is
Yeah.
such a key piece that you don't want to lose sight of, because it is what changes you from, again, a contributor
And
to a
that's
leader.
absolutely, and that is what the real difference is when you're stepping up to an executive role where you get to participate in the decisions. It requires you to understand the impact you have on the bottom line, the impact you have on the value, the value of the company.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and that is literally what you're doing. I mean, the whole point of customer lifetime value and all of those things, everything that you're doing with the customer, it absolutely does contribute to that bottom line and to the value of the company. And so you need to be able to show that and connect it to that, and connect it to then what your own business goals are in your business stage. Right. And what you're trying to do together as an executive team. And that's really the difference when you start to participate, when you expect that of yourself, when you start to show up with that data and expect that of yourself as an executive. Right. And you start to participate on that level. They see you as an executive because you're just showing up in that way. And that is the real difference. Right? It changes the game, not just for your own career or your team or whatever. It changes the game for your company. I mean, you have a true impact.
100% agree. I think people will find it really interesting. The yarn you started to pull, you get in, you're trying to prepare for a board meeting. Don't feel like you have any of the data. Then you start pulling the yarn a little bit, and you start to see, wow, our churn is way higher than I really understood or had been told. How did you connect the dots? I don't think a lot of people would connect the dots between the churn number and where you ended up getting to of the cost to serve of your customers. Like, when did that segue into a profitability cost to serve conversation, and how did you tie the two together?
That didn't come from the churn question. The churn
Okay.
question was a separate question where it was just trying to, that was where going back in terms of trying to understand when did somebody sign on, which quarter do they belong to? How do you really calculate your churn numbers?
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of details. But in terms of the cost to serve and why did I go after that, it was really just because there was no real way I wanted to understand where everybody on the team was spending their time, and also what they were, what were the real contributions. Like I would say, and I know we've sort of run the gamut on so many different topics here, because we didn't, because this example comes from yesteryear when we were working in a different way. I feel like it's important to say how you update this, right? Because we're not in a growth at any cost period anymore, and we were at probably back during that time, it was starting to transition into profitability anyway. But we're definitely in a period now where we need to not only show growth, but also profitability. And that's critical for what our investors are looking for. And so how we do that, we need to understand what do we actually need to do, not all the things that we think we ought to do or that someone thinks, well, we've always done it this way, but what is actually driving to customers meeting their business objectives or for us meeting our own business objectives, the renewal or the expansion. Right. And so of those three things, what's actually needed to do? And then what is the most efficient and effective way to do it? And, how can you identify that with the data that you have and do it in the most efficient way with tools that you can? Because we're in an era where we have to take away all of our manual work and effort and really focus on getting the insights that we can through the tools that we have and the data that we have, as well as make certain that we're doing it the most efficient way as we possibly can. And that's where we are. We're not hiring our way out of any situation now. Now it's all about innovating our way through it.
Amen. So I appreciate your time. A pleasure as always to be able to chat, and looking forward to more conversations in the future. And if people want to follow a 3-time CS influencer, I highly recommend Jan as a good follow, and her master classes as well. Great to connect.
Thanks a lot, Mike. It was great to be here.